I agree with what you're saying, but the majority of the Americans are descendants from the 10 northern tribes of Israel. We are to know who we are. Research the Stone of Scone. So I know about the Stone of Scone. I mean, I know it's been, I think it's in Scotland now, right? So it's what they use to coronate their kings. They use the stone to go under the chair to coronate their kings. So let me just say this, because I don't want to go down the road of the... What I want to point out is that do people remember in the Old Testament that God did not want them to have a king. God didn't want it was the Israel that said, no, we want to be like all the other nations. We want to fall into the other nations' cultures and have a king. So what came with having a king? Well, because what did God want? God wanted, in my opinion, God wanted, based on stuff in the Old Testament too, especially, and even the New, was biblical maturity. Biblical maturity, closeness to God, so that the people themselves would know, did not need a king over them. What was America about? Not to have kings. We weren't. That was the biggest thing. The Pilgrims with the 1776ers writing the Constitution, that not to have kings, but who kept interfering? Kings, the Pope, the Pope, and the Pope at one time was the same as the Church of England, which is what many people who fled to America were fleeing. Now there was a time too, though, that Scotland and all of those countries, back in the, 1400s, 1500s, early 1500s anyway, that there was some respect they would give the Pope, but then there was a lot of fighting too. And I think it just keeps going back to that same story. God did not want, he was trying to raise his kids, his children, to be biblically, sorry, I have this gnat that keeps flying, sorry, to not just be biblical, but to be him-centered, to be God-centered in all that they did. So that because think about it, when you have to have a king over you, you're kind of a juvenile. Which is why the Catholic doctrine has taken over in America, okay? And this isn't against Catholics, it's just... There's a reason that the Catholic Church has a historical child molestation problem. It's because, if anything, God would strike it down, okay? Would strike that church down, because God did not want kings. The Pope has acted like a king. The Pope is what was going to be used to bring in the one world religion with the 2030 agenda. That's who they were going to use. I mean, that's the reason they look like the Pharisees. They with their hats, their gowns, their ridiculous robes, okay? As if they're somehow more important and better than everybody else. No, they're not any better than anybody else. And half of the stuff that they have told people is wrong, okay? And that brings in this whole, see, this is what happens. This is my lights just go out all of a sudden. Sorry. My light on my, okay, there we go. It'll probably go out again. Anyway, this is the reason why, too, that, they had to push that, the Catholic Church has pushed that Mary was a virgin for the rest of her life. Well, yeah, when you want to worship this fake Mary, that, and I'm not saying Jesus' mother was fake. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying what they turned her into was fake. That she didn't go on to have children. Yes, she did. Her and Joseph had children. So it's logical to realize that Jesus had half brothers. Okay, so it would only make sense that's who he would pass it down to. Now, some of those brothers, James being one of them, and these were the ones at the cross. Do people remember most of the apostles? They fled They didn't want to see Jesus being crucified. But his family, his mother, his brothers were there. Okay? And so when Jesus, said, mother, this is your brother, brother, this is, okay, those were his brothers. That should be logical sense. Like, that's common sense. They stayed till the very end. But James being one of them, he wasn't a beginning follower of Jesus's. It was after all of that. But, or near the end of it anyway, and Jesus passed it on to him. It would make sense that Jesus would pass it down in his line. Just would. Clearly, Jesus had the connection with God, so he would pass it down, wanting the bloodline to carry on. Even it doesn't mean that Mary wasn't a virgin when she had Jesus. It just means she went on to. I always believed. I was born and raised Catholic. I always was under the belief. No, she went on to have children with Joseph. She did. Somehow that seems to have been forgotten. But the Catholic Church, it twists things, it changes things. That's what happens when you have some king over you, especially when it comes to religion. That's the reason the Old Testament, God did not want them to have a king, because what comes with that is you have a ruler, and that ruler is going to tell you what to believe. And God wanted you to go straight to him. God wanted you to know him, so then people would know what truly he wanted. And that's, I think, in history, that's what's missing is everybody's lazy. Or not everybody, but many people are lazy, and they just I just want a king over me. I just want a pope over me to tell me what to believe, because the pope and the church are always right. Well, clearly they're not, and they've screwed up America. Not just them, many people have. But the whole point to America's history, the biggest thing was that we are not about a king, a monarch. We are not about that, which is why, Donald Trump, he could have thrown his royalty around. He didn't, because he knows that's not what America's about. So this is King James IV. This is Donald Trump's line, the King of Scotland. And this is a little bit about him. He was on the throne at the age of 15, and he is responsible for the major expansion, the Stuart monarchs, and the major expansion of the Scottish Royal Navy. And then you can see further down here, 38 ships, including the Michael, the largest warship of its time. This is the crest for him, for the royalty in Scotland. Do you notice something? What's coming up out of the top of the crown? It's like a lion. I've done videos on the crest, because if you look, I'm going to show Donald Trump's crest in a minute. The lion is conquering the crown. I think God was very against the crowns. That's the reason he didn't want Israel to have a king. But they demanded it. They said, no, we want a king, we want a king. So God said, okay, this is what's going to come with you having a king. They still wanted it, because they wanted to be like the Canaanite countries, all the other ones. And this is Donald Trump's crest. You see what's happening at the top? Yeah. It's the lion conquering the crown finally. Because the crown, in my opinion, even though not all of them have been bad, many have gone on to just lead people astray. And it's the people's fault too. And America's history was supposed to be not about these crowns and these kings. That's why I can't stand this. The Vatican and the Catholic Church just has wanted to bring in a king again. So, and plus, they've been so wrong in many of the things that they've taught, not to mention that when you go on to just teach, things that are not true about God and the Bible, then what you will have is you will have a bunch of people think they're worshiping the true Almighty God, when really they should look around and see the rampant child abuse should tell you true Almighty God does not reside there.